he told me something that I just still remember to this day. He was like, "You're going to be one of the top women in the UK one day," and I believe that. And I was like, if someone like Joe Hendry is telling me this, then why am I not believing it myself? So he just completely like changed my mindset.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Astrid Asks. I'm here with a very special guest, none other than Ashley Vega. How are you, Ashley?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to have you here with me today.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm excited to be here. I love doing podcasts and interviews. I think it's so much fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I couldn't agree more on that one. I just had a couple of questions for you because I seen your work recently, and I seen your or I heard your interview with Ella, and I seen your interview with Troy. I said I definitely had to have her on too, and I want to interview her about that opportunity as well. And I just kept listening to their questions, and I got inspired from there to ask you a few more. So I'm glad to have you on here for this.
Oh,
I
thank you.
definitely wanted to start with like for people that are not familiar with your work, is there any way how you could describe your character at this time that you have right now?
Yeah, I'd say Ashley is basically someone who, you know, loves how far the women have come, but thinks the divas need a little more recognition for starting that. And, I call myself the modern day diva because I believe that I can kick ass as good as all the other women, but I'll never forget where it all started.
Yeah, I definitely feel like we always think of I always think of that when people think about the women's revolution, because a lot of people tend to credit WWE for doing that. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, it's not just WWE. I feel like it's something like it's within like a community thing, because at the
Mhm.
time that I was watching like the divas here in WWE, they didn't have a lot going on for themselves, and I applaud them for taking advantage of every opportunity they had at the time. But I
Yeah.
had at the time I was also watching Impact, and Impact was doing like great things with the women and giving them the opportunities that we didn't do until years later. And like listening to your interviews, I heard that you were a fan of Impact. So did you have it like were you watching around that time in Impact when that was happening?
Yeah, like I first started off with WWE just because my older brother got me into it. Um, and in the UK, you had to like pay extra to watch WWE because it was on Sky Sports. But like TNA at the time was on like a free channel, so you didn't have to pay to watch it. So that's why I started going there to watch it. Um, and like, yeah, I just kind of grew up watching like it was kind of when Gail Kim had just went over. And then I was just like, why am I watching like 5 minute matches over on WWE and then on TNA? they're doing like women's like ladder matches, like they were doing like crazy stuff. So yeah, like I loved watching. To be honest, I love watching all women's wrestling, and I enjoyed, both sides of it. So that's kind of how I started with TNA.
Yeah, I felt the same way because I kept thinking, I was at a point where I was enjoying Gail, but she wasn't getting used the way I was hoping she would.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't taking advantage of in a good way in WWE. So when
Mhm.
she went over to Impact, I was like hoping this was better and a better opportunity for her. And it really was. Just watching her do like all these matches with Awesome Kong were just incredible to watch. And at the time, compared to WWE, I was like, yeah, I prefer what she's doing here than what she's doing over there.
Yeah,
Were you watching those as
100%.
well?
Oh yeah, like the one of the matches that I remember so much with Gail was the one with Taryn Terrell, because it was like one of the first Gail matches that I watched when she went over to Impact, and I just thought that, like, man, like this is like two different sides of this woman. Like she was just used so much better, and I don't think that Impact gets enough recognition for being the company that did treat the women the same as the guys. They were given the same opportunities and the same matches as the men were, and I don't think it gets a lot of recognition for starting that. Because they were doing it a lot ahead before a lot of other companies.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like a lot of people forget about Impact and how they started to bring that up to the table for the women there too, and giving them opportunities to have all these like first that they didn't get to have before, and having all these like main events and incredible matches and opportunities to like shine. And I feel like at times they outshine the guys with their performances too.
Yeah,
And it just I feel like it sucks at the same aspect when you think about it, because they don't get that credit for what they did for women's wrestling. But I definitely agree with you on that point. I definitely wanted to go back and think about like the beginning of like when you started wrestling. Like when was that time that you started wrestling, or did you have anybody that inspired you? Like you saw that person and you thought, this is, I really want to pursue this. And how was that
mhm.
about coming to, and how did you find about training, all that stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I always like knew about wrestling. Like, there's like 13-year age gap between me and my older brother. Around it because he was obsessed with WWE. And the first time I remember actually, sitting and watching it with him was a Raw, and it was Trish and Mickie. Because I was about 7 at the time, so it was like 2006, 2007, and I remember watching it, being like, "Oh my god, I never knew that women done this! Like, this is so cool!" And I was like really young, and I just thought it was so cool seeing like women do these like things that I'd never seen them do. And ever since then, I just became absolutely obsessed with wrestling in general. And I begged and pleaded with my mum at like the age of 14, I was, because I was looking for training schools. Because I didn't really know it was much of a thing in the UK. I didn't think it was possible. So I just had a look and begged my mum. And then she finally let me train at a school in Scotland. So yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because like having not only like for instance in the UK as well, like having a minor, like having to want to wrestle that young too.
Yeah.
I just think about like me at 14, it's like I will not be able to like get my mom, convince my mom to do something like this.
No, it
So
took
it's
a
like
long
to
time.
think about. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine. Another thing that I learned through like the interview you have with Troy too, which I thought was super interesting, being that I'm doing an impact show as well now. It's like you trained for a little bit with Joe Hendry as well, and he's definitely grown on us. Like I remember like watching the little promos they had of him at first, and I kept telling my co-host Cody, this is a little bit cringy for me. I don't know if I'm gonna like this guy. And then watching him not only wrestle, but how entertaining and charismatic he is. Like, how was that like experience with you training with him and learning from him?
Yeah. Well, just before COVID started, I actually stopped wrestling and kind of gave up because a lot of stuff happened, and it kind of put me off the whole scene in general in the UK. And I left the school I was training at, and I was just like done with wrestling. I never wrestled in 2 years, and when I just before COVID, I found that Joe Hendry started up a school. Um, and I thought, like, why not? Let's maybe try someone else in this one. Maybe I just need to get in a new, different environment. So I reached out to him, and like he was so happy to have me. Um, and ever since like I started training with Joe, like my whole mindset changed of training and wrestling, and he was so helpful with like everything. Like I remember him saying to me, like I never had anyone properly tell me that they think that I could do this. Like past coaches were, really hard on me and really, you know, turned around to me one day and was like, "You are so capable of this. You just don't know it." And he told me something that I just still remember to this day. He was like, "You're going to be one of the top women in the UK one day," and I believe that. And I was like, if someone like Joe Hendry is telling me this, then why am I not believing it myself? So he just completely like changed my mindset. And I trained with him for 2 years, and I still go down and see him when I can. But yeah, he's one of the good ones. He's like the best.
Yeah, I was so impressed with him because like I told my coach Cody, it just I keep thinking it's like at first you look at him and the way he has a connection with the crowd that's so incredible to watch because I feel like a lot of people don't have that. The way that he just waves his hands and people do it like right after him or they sing his theme song like the way they do now. I was like, what does he have that a lot
How,
of people don't
yeah,
have? It's incredible
yeah.
to watch it. Like in so little time, he has won them over. I was like,
Mhm.
I cannot believe the connection, how he's built it up so quickly and so incredible. Like even I went to the tapings like what 2 3 weeks ago here
Mhm.
in Orlando, and just like be able to watch him and have everybody singing the song behind me was like this is so nice to like not only watch it on TV but like hear live as well.
Right.
It's incredible to see that experience with him there.
Yeah, he's amazing. I like when I first started wrestling, he was with, I don't know if you've heard of ICW here in the UK,
Mhm.
and he was one of the top guys there. And I was like, I've never told him this because it's really embarrassing, but I was such a Joe Hendry fan when I like was about 14, probably just before I started training. And I like would listen to his entrance songs and would learn the words, and I'd like sing it to myself all the time. So yeah, I was a big fan of his, and he deserves everything that he's got now because he went through a lot, and he really really pushed forward because a lot of people like myself didn't believe in him. And he hadn't been doing it very long, and he was making a name for himself. And I don't think people realize how good he was until now he's able to show everyone. And yeah, I'm very happy for him.
Yeah. And like thinking back of like your experience with the training, was there something that you were afraid to try when you first started training, especially at that age?
Yeah, I mean, I was never like into sports. I was never athletic as a kid. Um, I hated anything to do with like sports. And then, but wrestling was just different for me because it was the emotional thing that drew me into it. It wasn't anything else. It was mostly the emotional side of things. So it was really difficult at the beginning to start off with. Like I really, you know, considered stopping, and like because it was so out of my comfort zone. And back when I started, there wasn't a lot of girls, so it was always just guys you're around. And sometimes it's quite intimidating as like a 15-year-old. But I think that's what I found the hardest, was just trying to find out who I was, because I didn't really know, and I just kept doing it because I genuinely loved it. Like I hated the training sometimes because it was so difficult, but I genuinely just loved wrestling, so I just kept doing it. You know, I didn't really want to stop.
Yeah, that's something that I was curious about too. Like thinking back of like your characters, how like when you first started, what made you decide to be one character? Like, how does that really have changed over time for you?
Yeah, I mean, I never really knew. Like, I debuted when I was 16 in 2016, and I was just like, I just the gear that I wore was just random. I just thought it was cool, so I wore it. Like I didn't really know who I was. And then I think, you know, people were like, "Well, if you like watching the divas, why don't you embrace that?" And I was like, I don't think people will like it. I think people will think I'm, there was people that were saying, "Oh, you're setting wrestling back by doing all this kind of stuff, and you're not crediting what all the women are trying to do now." And I was like, no, actually, like I don't really care, because that's what I enjoy watching. If I enjoy watching like divas matches, like, and I want to do that and I want to show that, then why does it matter? Like, feminism and women empowerment should be what you want to do and what women want to do for themselves. And if you don't like that, that's fine. You just do what you like. So that's kind of how I found it. 'Cause I just embraced what I enjoyed watching when I was younger. I just became that person.
Yeah, I really love that. I like the way you've learned about like your transformation and your persona there too. And it also made me curious because you said like obviously aside from wrestling, another thing that I noticed that you really enjoy is video games and you've been playing a lot of the video games on your YouTube channel. So how did
Yeah.
your love for video games really came about?
Well, it was actually my brother as well. The first game that I ever played was SmackDown versus Raw 2007 for like the PlayStation 2. Um, my like brother gave me his PlayStation, and it was the only game that I knew how to play. And I wasn't good at it, but I would just play it constantly. And then ever since then, I just kept buying all the wrestling games, and um, I had like a GameCube and PS1 that my big brother and sister had kept from when they were young. So I was like, oh, let me try and see what wrestling games were out when before I was even born. And I just like, I don't know, I just find it so interesting. Like I love playing games. Like it's always, if I have any spare time, I'm always playing the Xbox, I'm always playing the PlayStation on them. Like I'm playing some sort of game. I love so many games. There's not even wrestling games, just like I grew up watching playing all the Mario games. Like I just love gaming.
Yeah, I feel like I don't want to say it's rare because at this point there's so many women that love video games they have
Yeah.
embraced it, but it's nice to see people, women especially embrace something in such a male dominated community like the video
Yeah.
game community too, like wrestling too as well. Um,
Mhm.
Another thing that I was also curious about is just I've seen your love for like Mickie James online. So it's like I met her recently as well. So it's like, did you have a particular moment that made you like really like not only fall in love with that, with her and wanting to meet her, but also wanting to face her as well?
Yeah, I mean, like it all started from when I was like 6, 7 years old when the first women's match I watched was with her. And ever since then, like I would in all the games I would go as Mickey, like and I just thought she was just so cool because she was one of the first women that I watched wrestle and was one of the first women wrestlers I was ever aware of. Um and like when I started wrestling and started training, I would copy a lot of her, what she did in the ring, because I just really liked her style, and that's just kind of how it all started with Mickie. Like her and Trish were my all-time favorites. So yeah, and then I just would talk about it online every so often, and meeting Ella and speaking to Ella, she kind of introduced me to Mickie. Um, so that was, you know, unbelievable. And then I eventually got to meet her, which was like probably the best day of my life. It was just so cool getting to meet the person who like, because if I never watched her, I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be wrestling. So I've got a lot to thank her for, and meeting her was just so amazing. And she's up for wrestling me, so hopefully it happens this year. We'll see. I don't know.
Yes, I would love to see that. But it's like now
Yeah.
that you mentioned her as one of the people that like really inspired you to do this, is there anybody else aside from Mickie who inspired you to
Oh
continue and
yeah.
pursue wrestling too?
Oh, so many, so many. I grew up like Candice, Michelle. I thought she was just so entertaining. Tori Wilson, Trish, obviously, Layla, Michelle McCool, Kelly, like all the women from that Divas era, pretty much. Even the women now, like Natalia, I literally grew up watching her from the beginning of her career to where she is now. So, I mean, there's just so many, and there's so many guys as well that I loved growing up. One of my favorites was Jeff Hardy. He was my fave. Um, yeah, like yeah, there's just countless people that inspire me. But if I had to pick like a top two, it would probably be Mickey and Trish.
Yeah, I don't blame
Yeah.
you there at all. Um, I also thought about like you being somebody like if you were, for example, coming to the United States and wrestling anybody here that you see in the Indies, is
Mhm.
there anybody in particular you would like to face like that's currently in the Indies here?
Yeah, like there's I mean, I was thinking on the Indies, and then I was thinking of AEW women, but it's not really the Indies, is it? there's just, even just like outside of the UK in general, there's so many women on the independents that I enjoy watching and that I want to wrestle. I'm trying to think off the top of my head how many there is, because I had like a list of people that I wrote that I wanted to wrestle this year. So I'll see if I can find it. But yeah, I mean, for me, I've not wrestled outside of the UK yet. So I want to go, whether it's America, where it's wherever it may be. I want to get out there and wrestle, not just people in the UK. I want to wrestle, I want to like do as much as I can on the independents. Yeah, I just want to wrestle as many people as I can and travel, because that's all I've ever wanted from wrestling is, if I don't get signed, if I don't get to do this forever, I want to be able to make an impact on the independents and wrestle as many women as I can, like pretty much all over the world, because I love America. Like, I've only been a couple of times, but if I got to wrestle there, that would be amazing. I want to make it happen. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
let's make it happen. And like, you maybe also think back of like being that we're still towards the beginning of the year. Like, what are your goals for this year when it comes to
Mhm.
wrestling? Like, aside from what you mentioned about wrestling in America, and if you can
Mhm.
tell me anybody from AEW you like to face, I would like to hear that too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like there's I don't know, like this year definitely I wanna wrestle outside of the UK. I want to maybe wrestle for a bigger promotion, whether that be Impact, AEW, NXT, whatever it is. Like, there are just so many opportunities just now. And I think wrestling's kind of the biggest it's ever been, and there's never been this many people involved in it. So, if I was at AEW, I mean, I'd love to wrestle like Jamie Hayter. And I've actually wrestled Jamie before. She went to AEW a long time ago. And, to see how much better she is, it would just mean a lot to get to wrestle someone like that again. Jade is killing it in AEW. There's just so many women. Like, it's insane how big this industry is just now. Like, there is just so many talented people, and there's so much opportunities for people like myself on the independents, because there is such a bigger. There's so many more companies, and there's so much more televised companies to really get yourself out there. So I think like for this year, like I don't really know what my goals are, because there's so much
Mhm.
opportunities.
And I'm glad you mentioned NXT because I feel like I think it was yesterday, the day before that, there's been an announcement that some NXT stars will be allowed to do some indie dates
Yeah.
every now and then. So it's like, do you have anybody from NXT that you like to face sometime soon?
Yeah, I mean, there was, like Nina Samuels from NXT UK when she was there. I've always wanted to wrestle her. Um, I'm thinking of like past people from NXT, like Tony Storm. I've never got to wrestle her. That would be amazing. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many that I wish that I got to wrestle. There's women on the, WWE roster in general that came from Scotland that I've not been able to wrestle. So, like Nikki Cross and Piper Niven, I've not been able to actually wrestle, which is it really hurts. But I mean, never say never.
Yeah. I also thought of like thinking back when you were talking about Impact too. Is like, did you have a funny moment from when you were watching Impact back then too?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite moments. I was such a big AJ Styles fan, growing up, and his matches with like um Samoa Joe were like the some of my favorite matches of ever watching, and they're some of my favorite moments. For in general, though, like I mentioned earlier, one of the matches and as it sticks out to me is the Gail and Taryn Terrell one, because it was the first time I ever saw women wrestle like that. So that has to be like one of my favorites, because I remember watching that and being like, holy, like I know a woman can wrestle, but oh my god, they're doing the stuff that the guys do. So that was one of my, all-time favorite moments of Impact. Yeah, that has to be.
Well, in thinking back, since you're a fan of the Divas era, did you have a favorite moment from the era as well?
So, probably I really liked. and I was thinking about it earlier, the Lay Cool, um, that whole storyline and how they carried, you know, those belts, both of the women's belts, the Divas, the women's, and it was just, and like how I said, I first got into wrestling with the emotional connection. They were so entertaining as a team, and oh man, like that, they were just, yeah. And one of the other rivalries that I really remember from that era is Kelly and Beth Phoenix. You know, like they don't, like things like that. A lot of people don't think of when they think of the women's division. They will always think of Trish and Lita, but there were so many other rivalries, and Beth and Kelly was one of my favourites. Growing up, and I remember watching, like, staying up to watch their SummerSlam match for the Divas title, and I was like, this is so cool. Like, I wish they were given more time, because no matter what they were given, they really worked with what they were given, and it was just so fun to watch as a wee girl. Like, I loved it.
Yeah, I feel like people forget often about people like Kelly and even Beth Phoenix don't get the flowers they should get. And for me,
Yeah.
it's always been like when you think about the women, people think of Trisha and Lita. And it's like, what about
Mhm.
Victoria? Give Victoria some love, people, please.
Victoria for the Hall of Fame this year,
Yes.
please. The woman needs it. The woman deserves it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't give enough flowers to that era, especially. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people think it started with the Four Horsewomen, but the women's revolution's been going on like since before the 2000s, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. I did have two community questions for you. This one is from kayfabe underscore wrestle. They say, could you ask when she's coming next to the north? I love to see her in Brit Wrestling Revolution. I'm guessing from
yeah,
Twitter.
I've not been down in England and since, God, I don't even remember. Maybe beginning of last year. I mean, I used to wrestle a lot in England and down there. So I mean, whatever company is happy to have me, I'm happy to be there and wrestle whoever you want me to wrestle.
No, there you go. No, no promises, but you never know. You reach
Yeah.
out. And this one special to me. I can always count on Bobby Batito. I think you've seen him on Twitter as well. Always asking questions. So he said, "Would you like to wrestle a starter in Japan against Mariah May or even Mercedes Moné, aka Sasha Banks?"
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Mariah May, someone in the UK I've actually not worked with, and she's amazing. That would be really cool. Of course, I'd like to wrestle Mercedes. Like, she's, oh, you know, she's just killing it. She's just amazing. She's genuinely one of the best at what she does, and I would love to go to Japan to wrestle. There's so much talented women down in Japan, so why not? Why not do it? There's not been a lot of Scottish women that have wrestled in Japan, and so I'd like to do that.
Yeah. But actually, before I let you go, where can people find you on your socials? And do you have anything else going on sometime soon?
Yeah, all my socials are at Ashley Vega UK. And for what's going on, I've got quite a few matches lined up for this year. So if you want to see them being announced, give me a follow and I'll be posting all of that on there.
No, and thank you for taking time out of your day to do this with me. I really appreciate it. And it's nice to have you in this more personal space to chat with you about women's wrestling somehow.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's been good.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Make sure you follow Ashley on her socials and watch out where she will be able to wrestle next, which is really exciting to think about. Yeah, I hope to see you on Impact soon because I've been watching Impact, so that's one of my things for this year. Hoping to see you there sometime
Yes,
soon.
that's my dream, so we'll make it happen.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank everybody for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and go back and watch my past interviews and check out this interview with Ashley. Thank you for spending your time doing this. And you can share with anybody that you think will be a fan of Ashley and what she will be doing sometime soon. But thank you everybody for watching. Have a nice one.